Hello, everyone. My name is Megan DeMore, and I am here at Comic-Con 2019 with David Dastmalchian.
Hello.
You may know him from a couple little projects like The Dark Knight, or The Flash, or Gotham, or Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is quite a storied comic book career. So I have to ask, is that something that's intentional? Like, do you seek out these roles, or did they just kind of fall into your lap?
With acting, as much as we like to make intentional, I believe that it is like playing the lottery, and I am the luckiest. I'm the luckiest nerd I know. I grew up just in the world of going to my local comic shop in Kansas City was called Clint's Comics, and that was my weekend every weekend, and that and movies were my life and my dream. And then I fell in love with acting when I got a little bit older, and I went and studied acting and became a professional theater actor in Chicago, but always still reading my comics and going to my movies and dreaming of working in movies. And I got the opportunity to audition for my first movie in 2008 for The Dark Knight, and that was my break. That was the first time I was ever on a movie set, and it has been a very surreal roller coaster ride all the way up until the very moment that we're experiencing right now, which is still just insane.
And now you're not just an actor, you're also a writer, and you've got a comic book coming out. Can you tell us a little bit about that and who you're working with on
I'd
that?
love to. Yes. So I've written my whole life, and I've written in all different forms and formats. And I wrote my first screenplay that was actually produced in an independent film called Animals, which we made in 2013 and came out in 2014. And then I had another dramatic film script called All Creatures Here Below, which actually just came out, stars Karen Gillan, one of the best actors in Hollywood right now, and those have been incredibly rewarding experiences for me as an artist, as a storyteller. And then since I was about 12 years old, growing up in Kansas City, like I was telling you, and collecting comics, but also watching my Friday night creature feature, which was hosted by an incredible woman called Crematia Mortem, played by Roberta Sullivan. But Crematia Mortem's Friday creature feature, I obsessed over it. And in the years since then, I've always been imagining this world in which this hero battles monsters, and their alter ego is as a horror host. And that idea, that 12-year-old in me's idea, has evolved and taken a lot of new meaning on as I've grown into my adult life, experiencing a world in which I believe monsters are real, whether they may be in the guise of humans or politicians or people that we see around us on the news or in real life. So I had this idea that I thought would be a really interesting television series. So I work on the new MacGyver, and Peter Lenkov, who is a mastermind behind so many nostalgic properties that have become television and film. I said to Peter, I could use your advice. I have this idea that I think I want to try and create a TV show to try and pitch. Could I talk to you about it? And he said, sure. And so I was telling him about this hero, this Count Crowley hero, and Jerry Bartman, this woman that I want to be this horror host. And Peter just latched. He loved the idea. He got really excited about it. And next thing I knew, one of his producers, Ashley Dazan, came in the room, and then we were just going, and we're excited. And then he wanted to introduce me to Mike Richardson at Dark Horse, and I met them last year at Comic-Con. We had a big sit-down meeting, and they told me that they thought it would be really cool that this story would lend itself to comic books. And I freaked out because, like I said, I've been reading and collecting comics. I've got thousands of comic books that I never imagined in my wildest dreams. I just never thought I would have a story that would. I didn't imagine I was going to be a guy that could write a comic book. I didn't ever look at comic books that way. It was never something that I thought, like, I'm going to make those things. I just loved them, and I love getting lost in them and collecting them. But the idea of making one was something that hadn't even crossed my radar. So when Mike Richardson is sitting there with you from Dark Horse saying, I love this idea, I think it would be a great comic book, I died. And then I had to dive into learning how to write a comic book. And fortunately, because I've been writing screenplays, there is a great connective tissue. And I have an incredible editor, Megan Walker at Dark Horse. And then she introduced me to Lukas Ketner, our artist, and he drew his first sketch of what he thinks Jerry Bartman, a.k.a. Count Crowley, would look like. And I hope that you can show your audience, but it is, I've never seen, I've never had that experience where I've imagined something for 30 years and then someone drew it and painted it and it looks even more like what I dream of than my own dream. It's crazy. So here we are. We've just announced the comic. It comes out October 23rd and issue 1 and it's an insane ride.
Now that we've stepped into, or at least you've stepped into the world of comics, is there any property that you, over the years, that you would just love to have a crack at?
As far as writing?
Yes.
Yes. A number of them. I'd love to bring back like a Blood of Dracula and do something of my own with that. I think it's really fun reading and following what's been happening, with... They're doing like a cool kind of Reanimator right now and Vampirella mashup, which has been fun. I would love to dabble in that. But I hope now that I'm getting to know people at Dark Horse that at some point I could take a crack at a BPRD story or plot line, because I think that what Mike did with that world and creating a universe that is open to both its history, as you're seeing with, there's so much stuff in that universe now, and the Witchfinder stuff and all. It's so cool. I would love to get my hands and take a shot at something in there.
Now I'm going to switch tracks a little bit because we recently found out that you're going to be in the Suicide Squad.
Oh, says who?
Says you.
Is that out there? Oh, yeah.
Can you, in your own words, describe Polka Dot Man?
I honestly don't know. I don't know anything about Polka Dot Man. I don't know anything about. I really don't know anything about Suicide Squad. All I know is truly, seriously, like I know that James is one of probably the greatest people who makes movies in our time, and what he's done with the characters, be they super obscure characters that even like comic nerds might not be totally familiar with, all the way to like legendary and iconic characters. What his mind, what his imagination, what his heart does with telling these stories is it's mind-boggling. And I am as excited as probably you are, as probably everyone watching this is, to see what he's going to do with this next movie that he's about to make, as well as the one that's coming after it. Like, how incredible is that? The guy is going to get to actually make the movie that we've all been hoping and waiting to see since Guardians 2 came out. Thank God, like, the universe was righted finally. And, but yeah, that's it.
Well, then can you talk maybe a little bit more about how you got involved in the project?
I don't know. I take your word for it. I mean, you're a journalist, I'm just an actor. I don't know really what's, what, but, maybe I've got an idea. So Comic-Con 2020, when this couch is reset in this room, we'll sit down and maybe we could talk about other things like that. How is that a date?
Absolutely, it's a date.
Cool.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about your TV history then,
Yes.
because I think one of my favorite villains on The Flash was Abra Kadabra, and that was
Thank you.
just it felt like it was ripped straight out of the pages of The Flash.
Thank you for saying that. I was very familiar with, and I do love the DC villains and the Rogues Gallery, and there's something about characters like Abra and maybe some other characters that are out there. But there's something special about Abra for me, because what's his motivation and what really drives him? And of course, there's different plot lines where they've tried to go different directions, and I appreciate what they did with Rebirth because it was cool to see him come back. But I love the guy that all he wants is attention, and all he wants is everybody to love him. And I think that's such a gross, sick, kind of twisted thing, and that like he would come from the future to get millions of people to like applaud and bow down before him and have all this power. So when they called me and asked if I wanted to play Abra Kadabra, I was very excited. And I also really love the show. I think Grant is so good. The whole cast is great. So I'm glad that you liked that. I wanted it to be even more in a way of like a nod to the nostalgia of those more classic rogues, I think we got there. I think we got to do something that that felt like a real nod to that DC world of yore.
What are the odds we'll see Abra Kadabra sometime in the future?
Well, because I am from the future, and because I'm a magician, I can tell you that all is going. Oh, the assassins are over there. They're like, you can't say anything about. Yeah. No, I've always got my cards, and Abra's. He's always right there waiting to jump back in. I don't know if they could handle him. I mean, honestly, I think if you gave him too much time, he'd really end up taking over Central and probably getting everyone to just applaud. He could mesmerize everyone and hypnotize them into a 3,000-year long standing ovation, because that's what he really wants.
So he's a little bit more intimidating than the Anti-Monitor?
A little bit, maybe. I don't know. It's up to, that's a personal choice, personal decision. But yeah, no, and TV world has been. I love what's happening with television. I love the world of long form storytelling. I think it's like comic books, and I think we can come back every issue, just like you come back every episode, just like with movies. What's happening with Marvel? What's happening with DC? I'm so excited about the time that we're living in entertainment, especially as someone who loves comic books. And I'm working on a really cool TV show that isn't from a property that exists called Reprisal that'll come out for Hulu next year. And the guy who created that, I feel like his mind reminds me a lot of like Frank Miller with some Tarantino, Rodriguez, that vibe of like, this is like a timeless kind of world we're creating, and there's gangs, and I get to play dude. If you liked the look or the style of some of the crazier characters I've played before, I can't wait for people to see this character Johnson in Reprisal, and then a Dune. I mean, gosh, I'm a nerd. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Dune, because I wanted to talk a little bit about that as well, because I feel like the character you're playing, I can't remember the name.
Peter
yes,
DeVries.
Thank you. They've got such the mentats. They've got those aesthetic, like that look. And can you talk a little bit about crafting that character and sort of?
Peter DeVries is the way he's described in the book, and I think that what's so wonderful about him is that he's a human computer. All the mentats are human computers, but some have been twisted. Peter is one who has been twisted. So his work for the Baron and what he needs to achieve for House Harkonnen is dark. And what was tricky for me, and what has been tricky for me as this film is being made, is I've played a lot of characters that some have said are twisted or dark, or like with Abra, he's fun because he needs the love. He's filling this empty hole in his heart. But with maybe darker or even more serious characters, it's been really always a gift to know that I've always worked for and with collaborators who've created characters that are so, the motivations behind them are emotional. Whereas Peter is like the computer version of sociopathy. I mean, his curiosity and his ability to harm someone or hurt someone to achieve a goal is as much out of a kind of sick curiosity as it is to achieving the goal that needs to be reached. And that was hard for me. I'm not like, it was actually really like, because you could just twist your mustache and be a bad guy and just like want to hurt people, and you could do that, but that's not the movie Denis making, and that's not the book that Frank Herbert wrote. I mean, the characters in Dune are some of the most well-rounded, some of the most multidimensional characters in literature. I mean, it's incredible when you look at that piece of writing and you look at all the angles at which he wrote about his characters and their relationships to one another. So when I think about how I was going to make Peter move, speak, exist, really, really interesting.
Speaking of those collaborators, you're working with Kevin Smith on Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. So tell me about your character in this film.
So Jay and Silent Bob Reboot was a blast for me to work on. Kevin has become a good friend over the years, and through Kevin, I've gotten to know Jay, and Jay's directorial debut, The Madness and the Method, is coming soon. I actually first worked on Madness and the Method with Jay. They had reached out and asked if I wanted to come play a role in Madness and the Method. And so I said, of course, yeah. And I went and we had a blast. I played this character called The Witness, and it was so fun shooting that. And so then when Kevin started working on the reboot, I said to him, I was like, hey man, anything you want, I'd love to come play and do a cameo. And he was like, are you sure you want to come? Because we need somebody to be this. I don't know if you've seen the trailer.
Yes.
Yes, SWAT team member who is very nervous. He's having a very rough day. He's very uncomfortable. And when we go to raid their spot, the reaction, because Jay doesn't seem to hear us very well, and we're saying drop your plants, and he drops his pants, and I freak out. He tucks. What can I say? Jay tucks, and my character doesn't understand what's happening. And it was surreal, dude. It was so cool to be like on set with those two guys who are such incredible friends and such great people. I mean, their relationship to one another and all the crew and their friends that were with them making their movie, and seeing Kevin, who came at the very edge of death's door just a year ago and is now making his movie. Like, it was awesome.
All right, I believe that's all we have time for today.
Just today. But next year, what's the date? Next year?
2020.
2020. I'll be
back
right here. Yes.
All right, that's a promise.
I can't wait. It is a promise. And Count Crowley will hopefully be far into many issues by then, and you'll have gotten to read it and learned about Jerry, and she'll be your new favorite comic character, right?
All right, looking forward to it. Stay tuned with CBR for more news out of Comic-Con 2019.
Thanks, guys.